Hello grade 9, how are you guys? How's everything? I hope you are fine, and I want to say I do really miss you. In today's video we're gonna start our first grammar lesson. It's chapter 4 and it's the first lesson in this quarter. It's about, as we see, the clauses. Just to remind you, we have finished chapter 3 in the last quarter. It was about the phrases, and just to remind you also, the phrases is a group of words that doesn't have subject or a verb, or it doesn't have both of them. The clauses are different, so let's see what are the clauses and what types of the clauses. First, what is the clause? A clause is a word group that contains a verb and its subject, and that is used as a sentence or as a part of a sentence. So it is not like the phrase. It has a subject and it has a verb or a predicate. It can be a sentence or a part of a sentence. If it's a sentence, then it must have these two, subject and verb. Also, if it's a part of the sentence, it must have the subject and the verb. If it's just one sentence, like this sentence, the people left the building, that's a sentence. The people is the subject, left is the verb. We can say it is a sentence or it is independent clause. Why this name, independent clause? Because it doesn't need any other complement or any other words, any other phrases, any other thing to complete the meaning. It means it has individual, right, complete, sensible meaning. Let's go to the second example here. When the fire alarm sounded. When the fire alarm sounded. We can see there is a subject. There is also a verb. Fire alarm is the subject and sounded the verb. But it doesn't have sensible, complete meaning. When the fire alarm sounded, I don't understand. That's why it needs another clause to depend on it to give us a whole right meaning. That's why it's called subordinate clause or dependent clause. Alright, let's see the third sentence. When the fire alarm sounded, the people left the building. So we have now both of them. When the fire alarm sounded, the people left the building. The first one is subordinate clause, and the second one, the people left the building, it's independent clause. Do not forget, we can replace them. I mean, we can say the people, I can start with this, the people left the building when the fire alarm sounded. But will be difference in punctuation. If I will start with the subordinate clause, then I have to add comma at the end of the subordinate clause. But what if I start with the independent clause? It will be one sentence. It means no commas, no full stop, no period, nothing. It will be the people left the building when the fire alarm sounded, just run-on sentence without any punctuation. Of course, I will add the period at the end of the whole sentence. And this kind of sentence, guy, is called complex sentence. Why? Because it does have both of these clauses. One of them independent and the other one dependent or subordinate. Alright, so now we understand what is the clause exactly. Group of words that has both of these two elements, subject and verb, and it can be sentence or it can be part of sentence. Sentence means the independent clause, part of sentence means subordinate clause or independent clause. Very well. Now we need to know what are the kinds or types of clauses. Let's go and see. The independent clause and the subordinate or dependent clause. The independent clause or main clause expresses a complete thought and can stand by itself as a sentence, and I told you that's why we call it independent. The example: Miss Santa works in a law office in downtown Concord. Here it has a subject, it has a verb, and it has a full complete meaning, and it doesn't really need another sentence or another subordinate clause to depend on it. Let's go to the subordinate or dependent clause. It doesn't express a complete thought and can't stand by itself as a sentence. As we see here, when you arrive at the airport in Dallas, does it give a full meaning, or you feel there is a shortage in understanding this clause? Yes, there is a shortage and it's senseless. The same idea, which grow only locally, it has the same thing exactly. So I can say subordinate clause has subject and verb, and it doesn't give a complete meaning. Here we can see the difference between both of them. Clauses must have subject and predicate, so all the clauses, dependent or independent, must have subject and predicate. Clauses have two types: independent and dependent. Independent must have subject and predicate or verb. Predicate means verb. Also, it can stand alone, as we know. Dependent or subordinate must have subject and predicate as clause. It can stand alone. Subordinate clause has two types. The two types of the subordinate clause are very easy. One of them called adjective clause and the other one called adverb clause. Adjective clause must start with a relative pronoun. Again, adjective clause, which is one of the two types of the subordinate clause, must start with a relative pronoun. What are the relative pronouns? That, which, who, whom, whose. So, mister, if we will start the dependent clause with a relative pronoun, then it means it is an adjective clause. I can say, yes, it is an adjective clause. The other type is adverb clause. An adverb clause must start with subordinating conjunction. What are the subordinating conjunction? These are the most common subordinating conjunction: after, although, as if, as long as much, and you can read all of them. I think it's very easy, and I will repeat it again. All the clauses, guys, all the clauses, sentence, dependent or independent, subordinates, independent, all must have subject and predicate. Clauses are two: independent clause, which is sentence. It doesn't need another sentence to complete the meaning because it's already completed. And the other one is dependent or subordinate, and it needs another sentence to complete the meaning. Alright? Dependent or subordinate clause has two types. One of them is adjective clause, and the other type is adverb clause. Adjective clause easily starts with one of these relative pronouns, that, which, who, whom, whose. Adverb clause starts with subordinating conjunction, and these are the subordinating conjunction, and you can find them in your box. We just gonna start with this exercise, very easy exercise. It just asks you to identify the independent and subordinate clause. Let's start from number 1. Baseball is a game that generally depends on good eyesight as well as athletic skills. We need to know that the independent clause or the normal sentence, it must have one full meaning. Like, baseball is a game. Yes, baseball is a game. It's independent clause. That generally depends, and so until the end of this clause, of course it is dependent or subordinate. Why? Because it started with this relative pronoun that. So I made it here with this way. This light gray is the independent clause, and this light green is the dependent clause. Let's go on. Number 2, for this reason, until recently, playing the great American game has been something that people with visual impairment found virtually impossible. So let's take it one by one, step by step. For this reason, no verb. So you remember what it is? Yes, it is a phrase. Until recently, no subject, no verb also, so it is also a phrase. Playing the great American game has been something. So, does it make a full meaning? Yes, it does. So, playing the great American game has been something is independent clause. That people with visual impairment found virtually impossible is dependent or subordinate clause. Why? Because it started with this relative pronoun that. And if you remember, we can say it is an adjective clause. Why? Because it describes this something. The whole clause here is describing this something. So the same thing, playing the great American game and that people, there are two different clauses, one of them independent and the other is dependent. Only sighted players could participate until an engineer named Charlie Fairbanks invented beep baseball. So only sighted players could participate. I can see here independent clause, normal sentence, only sighted players could participate. It is independent clause. Until is a relative pronoun? No, it is subordinating conjunction. That's why until an engineer named till the end of the sentence, or sorry, the end of the clause is dependent clause, as we see here. Number 4. In this version of baseball, the ball beeps and the base buzz so that players like the one pictured here can tell when to swing and where to run. And this version of baseball, is it a clause, guys? No, it isn't. No. Why? It is not. Yes. Why? Because there is no verb in this version of baseball, no verb here. That's why it is a phrase. The ball beeps and the bees buzz. Actually, we have two independent clauses. The ball beeps, that's one. The bees buzz, that's two. So we have two independent clauses. So that players like and so on till the end. That what is that? That is subordinate clause started with subordinate conjunction, so that. Number 5. Each team has a sighted pitcher and sighted catcher. Alright, that's exactly independent clause. Who never get a turn at bat. Who never get a turn at bat. Who is a relative pronoun, that's why this clause is subordinate clause. And 6 fielders who wear blindfold so that they don't have a visual advantage. 6 fielders who wear and so that. So we have here another independent clause. 6 fielders who wear blindfolds. Here I can say that's independent clause, so that they till the end of the clause is dependent clause because it started with so that, which is subordinating conjunction. That's the number 5, and your homework is gonna be starting from number 6 till number 10, page 100. Send it to me on our group on WhatsApp. Thank you very much for your listening, and wait me for the next video.